The god of war descends. They called him Valthar, the god of war. He had destroyed 50 planets, burned cities to the ground, ended civilizations that dared to fight back. His army moved like fire. His ships covered the skies like black smoke. He had never lost, not once. And now he had come to Earth. Valthar stood tall inside his battle cruiser, looking down at the blue and green world below. He saw its oceans, its mountains, and its people running like ants. It was always the same. Fear, panic, begging for mercy. "These humans look weak," one of his commanders said. Valthar didn't answer. His red eyes stayed fixed on the spinning globe. "Shall we begin the strike, my lord?" another asked. Valthar raised one finger. "Send a message. Tell them who I am. Then, watch." Within minutes, giant ships broke through Earth's atmosphere. Loud sirens echoed across cities. The sky turned dark as Valthar's fleet covered the sun. Earth's armies tried to fight back. Jets flew, missiles launched, soldiers shouted orders. But nothing worked. Alien machines crushed tanks like toys. Their energy weapons melted steel walls. One by one, cities fell. But Valthar wasn't satisfied. "Where is their leader?" he asked. "Their governments have fallen. There is no one left to lead," a soldier replied. Valthar turned away from the screen. "There is always someone who refuses to kneel. Find him." He stepped out of the ship and onto the Earth himself. The ground shook with each step. Soldiers ran. People screamed. Even the animals fled from his path. But in one broken city, where the smoke was thick and the buildings burned, Valthar saw something strange. A single man stood in the middle of the street, alone, not hiding, not running. He was dressed in old soldier's gear, his armor scratched and worn. His face was dirty. His hands were bleeding. But his eyes, they were calm, cold, focused. Valthar stopped walking. The man didn't move. For a moment, they both stared at each other. Then the man spoke. "So, you're the god of war." His voice was low but steady. There was no fear in it. Valthar's lips curled into a smile. "And you are?" "Eli Ward," the man said. "Captain, Human Defense Force." Valthar's soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. Valthar raised his hand. "No, let him speak." Eli took a step closer. "You think you've won. You think humans are weak. But you haven't met all of us yet." Valthar tilted his head. "You stand alone. Your armies are dust. Your cities are rubble. And still, you challenge me." Eli's eyes burned with something Valthar didn't expect. Not hate, not madness, but belief. "You bleed like we do," Eli said. "Let's see if you die like us too." Valthar laughed, a deep, cold sound that echoed through the empty city. Then suddenly, without warning, Eli threw a grenade. The street exploded into fire and dust. Valthar was pushed back, smoke covering his vision. His soldiers rushed forward, shouting. When the smoke cleared, Eli was gone. And Valthar was smiling. "Interesting," he whispered. That night, the alien general couldn't sleep. He watched the recording of the moment over and over again. How did a single human stand before him and live? "Find him," Valthar said to his commanders. "Bring me the human, alive." The war for Earth had started, but now it was no longer just about conquest. It was about him, the human who didn't kneel. And for the first time in his long, bloody life, the god of war felt curious. The first strike. Eli Ward ran through the broken streets, heart pounding but eyes sharp. The grenade had bought him time, but not much. Behind him, alien scouts were already scanning the ruins. Drones buzzed in the air like angry wasps, searching, hunting. But Eli knew these streets better than anyone. This used to be his home. The city of Ashenfall, once full of lights, laughter, and life. Now, nothing but ashes and echoes, destroyed in less than a day by the god of war. Eli jumped down a collapsed stairwell and landed in an old subway tunnel. His boots hit the ground with a soft thud. It was dark, damp, and silent. He wasn't alone. A soft whistle echoed down the tunnel. He replied with 2 sharp clicks of his tongue. Moments later, a woman stepped out from the shadows. Her name was Lena, his second in command. She was thin, covered in grease and dust, but her eyes were full of fire. "You're late," she said. "Had a meeting with a god," Eli answered, breathing hard. "You lived. That's something." Eli nodded. "He wants to find me now." "Good. Let him try." Miles above the earth, Valthar stood at the center of his war room. A glowing map of the city hovered in the air. Tiny red lights marked troop movements. Yellow dots showed buildings cleared. And one blue dot, just one, blinked at the edge of the ruins. "There," Valthar said. "That's him." His commanders looked uneasy. "My lord, we should not waste time on one human. The planet is already falling." Valthar turned slowly, eyes glowing red. "This is not about winning. It's about understanding." He challenged me. "No fear, no surrender." He pointed to the map. "Send the shadow blades." Underground, Eli and Lena reached the rebel base, an old train station hidden beneath rubble. A small group of fighters were waiting. They were young, tired, scared, but still alive. "Listen up," Eli said, stepping onto a broken bench like a stage. "They're sending more troops. This place won't be safe for long." A boy raised his hand. "We can't fight gods, Captain." Eli nodded. "You're right. We can't. Not with guns. Not head-on. But we have something they don't." "What's that?" someone asked. "Rage, hope, memory, and home field advantage." He unrolled a rough map of the city and pointed to an alien supply drop site nearby. "We hit them tonight. Fast, loud. We grab supplies and vanish." Lena grinned, just like old times. The raid began just after midnight. Eli's team moved like shadows, silent, sharp, smart. They used old tunnels to get close, then struck like lightning. Alien guards fell before they could raise an alarm. Crates of weapons, food, and alien tech were loaded onto hover carts stolen from the invaders. But just as they were leaving, a high-pitched sound pierced the air. "Drones," Lena shouted. Red lights flashed in the sky. Alien machines dropped from above, spinning, clicking, scanning. A laser beam hit one of the rebels. He vanished in a flash of light. "Run," Eli ordered. The team split, scattering into different tunnels. Eli stayed behind, covering their escape. He fired 3 shots, dropped a smoke bomb, and disappeared into the darkness. But the god of war was watching. From his ship, Valthar saw everything through the eyes of his drones. "They fight like insects," one commander said. Valthar shook his head slowly. "No, like wolves. Fast, clever, and dangerous when cornered." He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "This Eli, he does not fight to win. He fights to cost us. He wants us to bleed." By morning, the rebels were back underground, bruised, tired, but alive. Eli sat alone near an old fire barrel, holding a piece of alien tech. It looked like a small cube, glowing softly. "What is it?" Lena asked, sitting beside him. "I don't know yet, but maybe it's a way to talk to them. Learn how they think." Lena looked at him. "You think that Warlord will listen?" Eli smiled weakly. "He already is. He didn't kill me when he had the chance. He's curious. That's something we can use." Meanwhile, far above, Valthar sat in silence. He had not spoken for hours. In front of him, holograms replayed the humans' raid over and over. There was something strange in the way Eli fought. He didn't follow patterns. He didn't rely on numbers. He relied on something deeper, something alien to the god of war. Emotion, choice, will. Valthar stood. His voice was calm, cold, certain. The human wants my attention. Fine. Give him a message. What message, Lord? His second-in-command asked. Valthar stared out the window at the wounded earth. Tell him. I will meet him. Alone. The human problem. Valthar had never felt this before. Not fear. Not anger. Not even confusion. But something close to doubt. His fleet had burned entire worlds without question. His soldiers followed his every order. His name alone caused armies to surrender before the first shot. But now, one man, a human, stood in his path and refused to kneel. Inside the battlecruiser's main hall, Valthar paced slowly. The room was silent, lit by blue flames that danced along the walls. A dozen commanders stood still, waiting for his next words. He turned toward them. This Eli Ward, he said. He is no ordinary fighter. He's just one man, my lord. A commander replied. We can crush him any time. Valthar's red eyes narrowed. Then why haven't you? The room went quiet. He walked to the center, where a large screen showed replay after replay of Eli's ambushes, raids, and escape routes. Red lines marked alien patrols. Yellow dots showed missing squads. And in the middle of the chaos, always was Eli. He fights with rage, Valthar said, but not wild rage. Controlled, planned. He uses our strength against us. He knows how we move, how we think. A spy, another asked. No, Valthar said. A survivor. Underground, in the ruined heart of Ashenfall, Eli sat across from an alien child. Yes, an alien. Her skin was blue, her eyes were silver, and she was scared. She had been left behind after a crash. Eli found her alone, hiding in a broken school. He had every reason to shoot her, but he didn't. Instead, he gave her food, water, warmth. Now she stared at him from behind a rusted crate, her thin fingers holding a warm cup of tea. Why are you helping me? She asked in a soft voice. Eli didn't look at her. He just stared at the small fire they'd built. Because you're not the enemy, he said. You're just a kid. But I'm not human. Eli finally looked at her. His voice didn't rise. It didn't soften either. War makes us forget that people are still people, no matter what they look like. The alien girl stared at him, confused. Then slowly, she smiled. High above, Valthar received a report. He watched the scene, Eli giving food to the alien child, from one of the drones that had followed him in secret. What is this? One commander asked. He shows mercy. Valthar didn't answer. He just kept watching. The drone zoomed in on Eli's face. There was pain in those eyes, but also strength, a strength Valthar didn't understand. What drives him? Valthar whispered. Later that night, Eli stood with Lena and the rest of his team in a half-destroyed subway car. What's the plan now? Lena asked. Eli pointed at a spot on the map. There's a communication tower here, alien-made. If we can hack into it, we might hear what they're saying. Maybe even send a message back. A message? Lena raised an eyebrow. To who? Eli didn't answer at first. Then finally he said, to him. The room went quiet. You want to talk to Valthar? I want to understand him, Eli said. If we know what he wants, what he's afraid of, we can use that. Lena frowned. Or he could track the signal and kill us all. Eli nodded. That too. But they all knew it was worth the risk. Because this wasn't just about guns anymore. It was about meaning. The next night, Eli's team made their move. They crossed ruined bridges, climbed broken towers, fought off patrols. At last, they reached the alien communication dish. Eli placed the stolen cube, the glowing one from before, into the panel. The tower came alive. Lights blinked. Signals sparked. Then, a voice. Deep, cold, powerful. Eli Ward. It was Valthar. He had been waiting. "You wish to speak?" the alien warlord asked. Eli took a deep breath. "Yes. I have something to say." "Then speak, human." "You think you're a god," Eli said. "But even gods can fall. I'm not your enemy. Not yet. But if you want this planet, you'll have to go through me." Valthar chuckled. "I look forward to it." Then the signal cut off. Silence returned. But something had changed. Now, it was no longer a war between armies. It was something personal. A duel between two souls. On the alien ship, Valthar sat alone in his chamber. He stared at the sword resting by his throne. A sword that had not been used in many years. He reached for it slowly. "Prepare the arena," he said. His voice was quiet, but firm. "I will face him." Duel of two worlds. The ground was cracked. Buildings leaned like broken teeth. Smoke curled through the air like ghosts. And in the center of it all stood Eli Ward. Alone. His boots crunched over shattered glass as he walked through the dead city of New Boston. A city that had once held 10 million people. Now, only silence. The message had been clear. Come alone. No weapons. No traps. Just you and me. Eli didn't know if it was a trick. But he came anyway. Above, the sky tore open as Valthar's personal warship descended. It was black and wide like a shadow across the earth. Engines hummed low, deep like thunder in a distant storm. Then, silence. A ramp lowered. No guards came out. Just him, the god of war. Valthar stepped onto the ash-covered ground with no armor, no sword, no crown. He wore only a dark tunic, sleeveless, his scarred arms bare to the cold wind. His red eyes locked onto Eli the moment he saw him. "You came," Valthar said. "You asked," Eli replied. The two stared at each other. Two leaders. Two warriors. From two completely different worlds. But in that moment, they were the same. "I watched your people," Valthar said calmly. "You fight hard. You die louder. You feel deeper than any species I've seen." Eli's jaw clenched. "And you still try to break us." "I was made for war," Valthar replied. "To conquer. To win. And I was made to survive," Eli said. "To protect what's left." A long silence stretched between them. "So what now?" Eli asked. Valthar slowly walked forward. "Now, we end this." In the ruins of New Boston Stadium, an old arena once used for football, the two men entered from opposite ends. The floor was dirt and stone now. Alien lights hovered overhead, watching, recording, broadcasting. In orbit, thousands of alien soldiers watched. Across what was left of Earth, rebel radios picked up the signal too. Human and alien. Warrior and warlord. Watching two men decide the fate of a world. Valthar picked up a curved blade from the center of the arena. It hummed with ancient alien energy. Eli stepped forward, unzipped his pack, and pulled out a simple metal pipe, sharpened at the tip. Valthar raised an eyebrow. "No sword." Eli smirked. "Lost it when your drone blew up my base." Valthar twirled his blade. "Then this will be short." "Maybe," Eli said. "Maybe not." And then they charge. The first clash echoed like thunder. Metal struck metal. Sparks flew. Dust kicked up around them. Valthar moved with brutal speed, swinging wide with alien power. Eli ducked, dodged, countered. He couldn't match the warlord's strength, but he was faster, smarter. He aimed for weak spots, for knees, for shoulders. He used the broken ground to his advantage, leading Valthar into tight corners. Every strike he survived bought him another second of life, and every second was a small victory. After 10 minutes, both were bleeding. Eli had a cut over his eyebrow. blood running down into his eye. His breathing was heavy, his chest rising and falling fast. Valthar had bruises across his ribs and a wound on his arm, a place where no one had ever landed a hit before. The warlord touched the blood, looked at it, and laughed. "You're different, human," he said. "You don't fight with rules. You fight with purpose." Eli spat blood on the ground. "Because I have something worth fighting for." Valthar paused. Those words hit something deep inside him. He thought about the child Eli had saved. He thought about the look in that little alien girl's eyes, fear turning into trust. He thought about his own people, about what war had turned him into. And for the first time in his long, brutal life, he felt tired. Eli saw it, a flicker of doubt in Valthar's eyes. And so he dropped his weapon. Valthar blinked. "What are you doing?" Eli raised his hands. "I'm not here to kill you. Not anymore. I'm here to offer something else." Valthar stared at him, confused, breathing hard. "You were made for war," Eli said. "But what if you could choose peace?" Valthar stood still. No one had ever spoken to him like this. He had killed kings. He had burned planets. But this one human, this one man, was offering him a choice. Silence fell over the arena. Then, slowly, Valthar dropped his blade. It landed in the dirt with a dull thud. A voice came through the alien comms, his top general, furious. "My lord, what are you doing? Finish him." Valthar looked up at the sky, where his ship hovered. And then he answered, "No." He turned to Eli. "Your people deserve better. So do mine." Far away, in rebel tunnels, Lena heard the message come through. She gasped. He said no. Fighters around her cheered, cried, hugged. Because the war was changing. Right there. Right then. One moment. One choice. One man who refused to kneel. And one God who finally did. Blood on steel. The arena was quiet now. Eli Ward stood still in the dust, chest heaving, blood dripping from his lip. His arms hung at his sides, one hand cut, the other bruised from blocking too many strikes. Across from him, Valthar, the god of war, had just dropped his sword. No one moved. No one breathed. All around the galaxy, screens went black for a moment. Then words began to spread. The Warlord spared the human. Far above, in orbit, inside the command ship blade of flame, General Crows watched the feed in silence. His face was stone, but his fists were tight. He hesitated. Crows growled. He disobeyed tradition. Another commander nodded. He is no longer pure, no longer worthy. Then he must be replaced. General Crows stepped toward the main console. He pressed a red symbol. Alarms flashed. "Send word to all high commanders," he said. "Initiate Protocol Black Sun." "What's Protocol Black Sun?" a younger officer asked, nervous. Crows smiled coldly. "We take the throne. We kill the traitor, and we burn the human." Down below, Eli and Valthar walked side by side through the ruins of New Voston. Neither spoke at first. The duel had ended, but something else had begun. "You could have killed me," Eli finally said. "I've killed thousands," Valthar replied, staring ahead. "But not like you. You were willing to die for your people. But not just that. You were willing to offer me a way out, even after everything I did." Eli shrugged. "Maybe I'm crazy." Valthar stopped walking. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe you are what we were meant to become." Before Eli could answer, a loud boom shook the ground. They turned. Black smoke rose in the distance. Valthar's eyes narrowed. "That's my ship." Within minutes, they arrived at the crash site. Valthar's personal war cruiser lay in flames. Wreckage spread across the ground. Alien soldiers, his own, fired at each other. A coup. A betrayal. His second in command, General Crows, stood at the top of the wreck, holding a glowing staff. "You were weak, Lord Valthar," Crows shouted. "You let a human poison your blood. Now, I will take your place." Valthar stepped forward. "Crows, stop this madness." "You taught us strength," Crows shouted. "But now you kneel to insects." Eli stepped up beside him. "Insect, huh? I've killed stronger things crawling through my boot." Crow's soldiers opened fire. The battle was chaos. Valthar and Eli moved as one. Strange, but natural allies now. Valthar picked up a fallen soldier's blade and cut through 3 attackers with one swing. Eli fired his stolen alien blaster, covering his back. The rebels, Eli's fighters, arrived moments later, led by Lena. They charged into the fight without hesitation. Alien turned against alien. Human fought alongside the god of war. What once was unthinkable was now happening before everyone's eyes. Amid the smoke and screams, Valthar faced General Crows on the burning wreck. "You were my brother in war," Valthar said, "but you never understood mercy." Crows bared his teeth. "Mercy is a lie. Strength is truth." They clashed. Steel on steel, fire on fire. But this time, Valthar was different. He didn't fight to conquer. He fought to protect. And with one mighty strike, he sent Crows flying through the air. The traitor crashed into a broken engine and didn't move again. After the fight, the silence returned. Bodies lay across the field, both alien and human. Eli dropped to one knee, catching his breath. Lena helped him up. "That was insane," she said, voice shaking. "We just fought with the enemy." Eli looked at Valthar. "No," he said, "we fought with a friend." Valthar looked out at the battlefield, at his fallen brothers. "It ends here," he said quietly. "The killing, the burning, the pride." He raised his voice. "No more gods, no more thrones, no more war." Aliens lowered their weapons. Humans stepped out of cover. And for the first time in generations, there was no fighting. But deep in space, something watched, a council of ancient warlords. Silent, cold, angry. "Valthar has changed," one hissed. "Too much. Earth must fall," another growled, "or it will spread." "Then send the cleansing fire," the leader said. "We will finish what he could not." On Earth, Eli and Valthar stood on a hill, watching the sun rise over the ruins. "This won't be easy," Eli said. "Peace never is," Valthar replied. They stood shoulder to shoulder, human and alien, warrior and warlord, no longer enemies, but brothers in blood. A new legend. The war was over, but the world was not the same. Cities still lay in ruins. The sky still held scars. Smoke still rose from places no one had touched since the first invasion. But something had changed. People had changed, and so had the stars. In a quiet corner of Earth, a school was rebuilt. Children sat on worn benches, their eyes wide with wonder as the old man at the front of the room spoke. His voice was rough, but full of warmth. His name was Captain Eli Ward. The children listened as he told them a story, not from a book, but from his own heart. "There was once a man," he said, "who was made for war. He burned cities, crushed armies. People called him a god, and for a long time, he believed them." He looked around the room, but then he met someone who didn't see a god. He saw a man. A small girl raised her hand. "Was that man you, sir?" Eli smiled. "No," he said, "I was just the reminder." The real hero was him. A giant statue now stood in the middle of New Boston's central square. It was simple. No armor, no crown, no weapons, just Valthar standing tall, his hand open, not clenched. Below the statue, the words were carved in 3 languages: human, alien, and neutral code. "To the one who was born for war, but chose peace." People from across the galaxy came to see it. Aliens brought flowers. Humans left notes. One small alien child placed a drawing at the base. a picture of her and a tall warrior holding hands. The same girl Eli had saved all those months ago. Lena sat on a rooftop, watching the sunrise. She looked older now, tired, but peaceful. A small drone hovered beside her, projecting a blue light. Inside the light was a hologram, Valthar's final message. His voice played softly. To the human who stood against me, and stood with me, your world showed me something mine never did. Choice. For that, I thank you. And if others come for your world again, they won't find it easy. Not anymore. The message faded. Lena wiped her eyes. Rest well, big guy, she whispered. Galactic news broadcasts change. For the first time in history, the front page headline was not about war, but peace. Human and alien unity conference begins today. Former enemy leads rebuilding efforts. War hero or war criminal? The debate on Valthar ends with peace vote. A new council was formed, not ruled by fear, but guided by reason. It had humans, aliens, and one empty chair left open forever in honor of the one who gave it all. Deep underground, in a secret archive, Eli placed a box on a shelf. Inside the box, a broken alien blade, a photo of his original rebel team, and the small silver device, the one that changed everything. He stared at it for a long moment, then shut the box, locked it, and walked away. Years passed, then decades. Children who once ran from shadows now walked freely under twin moons. Humans visited alien worlds. Aliens went to human schools. The words God of War were no longer spoken with fear, but with respect. Some still debated his choices. Some still feared his legacy. But everyone agreed on one thing. He was more than what he was made to be. One night, a small boy sat beside his grandfather on a grassy hill. They looked up at the stars. "Grandpa," the boy asked, "do you think he's still out there?" The old man smiled. "Maybe. Do you think he's watching us?" The man looked to the sky. A shooting star passed above them. "I don't think he needs to," he said, "because he already gave us what we needed." The boy blinked. "What's that?" "A chance," the man said, and the stars twinkled in silence. Far beyond the edge of the known galaxy, a figure in a dark robe walked through the ruins of an ancient battlefield. He carried no weapon, no flag, only a symbol on his chest, a small mark, an open hand. He kneeled by a stream and stared at his reflection. A flash of red glowed in his eyes, then faded. The wind whispered through the trees. A new name began to spread on distant worlds. The Teacher. But on Earth, he was remembered by another name, the God of War, who chose peace.